Welcome to another episode of Balance and Breakthroughs. I am your host, of course, WiL Singleton, and this is the space where we explore the moments that challenge us, shape us, and ultimately transform us, where personal truth meets growth and where breakthroughs aren't just possible, but they're inevitable. Today's conversation is one that invites us, blah, blah, is one that invites us to rethink what we've been taught about our bodies, our worth, and the stories we carry around within us. I'm joined today by Dr. Marcella Raimondo. Did I pronounce that right? Okay, cool. An eating disorder specialist, speaker, advocate for who sits at the intersection of mental health and social justice. She has lived in experiences just in years of clinical practice, and she is helping reshape the narrative around who struggles, who gets seen, and what real healing looks like. So, in this episode, we're going to explore everything beneath the surface into identity, representation, and deep cultural forces that shape our relationship with food, our bodies, and our own self esteem and well being. This isn't just a conversation about recovery, it's about a liberation, it's about freedom from society's stereotypes. So, whether you are on your own healing journey or supporting someone else, this episode is for you. So sit back, relax, turn off your phone, and let's get into it. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Marcella. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me. I'm just gonna turn off my ringer.
I already turned
Yeah,
off mine.
yes, I'm like, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I love your introduction. I love that it's more than just just recovery, but liberation and what that means for us and what that means as a collective in our society. So I love all of this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So give us a little snapshot of what you do, because I know we're talking about eating disorders, but I don't think that's all that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's great because I do work with folks who have
Hmm.
pretty severe eating disorders who, we have to talk about hospitalization or we have to like look at, what they're eating, their behaviors and how we need to change some of these behaviors for their health and well-being. And I've also had folks in my practice who haven't had eating disorders, and have just told me that I'm just tired of dieting. I'm
Mm.
tired of hating my body. I have hated my body for a long time, or just shared that, things were okay, and then I got depressed. I was dealing with postpartum depression. I had two kids. I've been stressed. I've gained weight, and they've said like, why do I have to be so hard on myself about that? But I've just been hating this,
Mm.
and so these are more like conversations that I feel like folks can relate to, and then that ongoing just persistent nag of I just really don't like my body. And it
Mm.
turns more into I don't like myself. It turns more into I worry about going to events. What am I going to wear? What am I going to eat? And and I usually, fortunately for this person, she came to me because she said, I'm not having fun anymore. And when I speak with folks and they are who are who or it's just like more in social situations or in with some of my work, and folks share like, well, this is what I do, this is how I eat, and you hear this level of just of restriction, of deprivation,
Mm.
of monitoring, of hypervigilance. And I have to ask, like, are you having fun?
Ooh,
And the answer is usually no.
yeah. It's become a punishment.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like, what, where did is this where we've come, where this is our relationship with food? Like, we
Hmm.
are punishing ourselves.
Hmm. So you do a lot of work professionally, personally, socially. Can you take us back to your own journey in recovery and how it shaped your life into this mission?
Oh, absolutely.
All
And
right.
yes, that is a very personal story and more happy to share. I was caught up in with my own anorexia when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will say my story is not unique, but it shares like more the intersection of social justice in that, my mother immigrated here from Peru. My father was first generation Italian.
Mm-hmm.
My mother immigrated here, and she was, a brown woman who was learning how to speak English. She was speaking English with an accent. And she began to really see that, wow, in the United States, thinness is ideal. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, in the United States, people are really valued and prized for being thin. And she felt like, well, as a woman, as a brown woman, who's trying to assimilate,
Mm-hmm.
she felt like I could assimilate and be accepted much easier when we are all thin. I mean, my mom was already thin,
Mm-hmm.
but she really felt this like, wow, thinness is our ticket in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was dealing with her own racism, but probably not, not so much aware. My father was dealing with his own, or my father had his own kind of like viewpoints on weight. And so how that translated to me was that, during puberty, we gain weight. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a time of rapid
Yeah.
body change.
Right.
And
Right.
we're gaining as 13, 14 year olds, we're gaining quite a bit of weight, and that weight is needed for our growth. What came with that was concern.
Mm.
What came with that was my parents and my mom being very concerned with how much weight I was gaining. Um, and then came the mixed message of being in Peruvian Italian culture. uh, you celebrate by food,
Mm-hmm.
lots of food. We are
Mm-hmm.
eating. So as a 14-year-old, I was getting a mixed message of you have to eat all this food. This is our culture. If you don't, that's a sign of disrespect
Mm-hmm.
and stop gaining weight. So as a 14-year-old, 13, 14, you're like, I don't know how to make sense of
Right.
a message like that. Like, it takes some time before we start to develop nuance and that and really holding simultaneous truths together. So for me, I was 14, I'm like, this is just confusing
Mm.
and I'm getting upset, and all I could do was withdraw. And I was feeling like also diet culture and this thin ideal. So I just began to withdraw, I began to restrict, anorexia set in, and there I was, 17,
Mm-hmm.
full-blown anorexia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I done a video blog earlier today about how we all have similar stories, but it's only similar on the surface because the triggers and the stories we carry are all unique. And I think when I'm listening to your story about, because I remember that time of being thin instead of healthy, because I went through my own, eating disorders, not where it got extreme, but like we were all heavy in the house. And even when I go home to visit mom, I have to like teach her again what I eat, and I can eat anything, but like I would prefer to eat like vegetables and meat, and not just carbs. And it's a real cultural education. How did you relearn all that? When was there a pivot for you,
Hmm.
as you got into your anorexia full blown? Where did that turn?
It turned, it was a process before things were turning for me. I mean, one thing that I am grateful for was that despite being so caught up
Mm,
and in my eating disorders, besides being so terrified of not having an eating disorder, I still had some degree of insight knowing that this is dangerous.
mm,
I'm really compromising
Mm-hmm.
not just my health, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of compromising my living,
Mm-hmm.
my mortality here. Uh, I knew that like I don't think I can do this. I began to notice ways, in many ways, that it was impacting my life. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't be present. I just noticed ways like I really couldn't function.
Mm.
So those were those were aspects that I began to realize. My turning point was when I began to pursue graduate school programs because
Mm.
I had just finished college. So I was 17, 22, still full blown anorexia.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there was going to be no way in the world I can get through grad school and have a full-blown eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that began to shift for me. I also just found myself isolated from people, and I just didn't want that anymore. And I think I just reached a point where I was tired,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
and I wanted my life back again. And so I think, you know, we have that phrase of that, you know, folks having to hit rock bottom or having to have like, you know, whatever it is, it's like
Yeah.
some spiritual moment where you are just really faced with your life and asking yourself a very important question of like, am I going to do something different? Because my life is not great and it's not getting better and it's probably going to get worse. And so
Mm.
I think many of us reach that. I believe it's kind of like a moment of desperation of
Yeah.
what am I
Mm-hmm.
doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was my moment of desperation.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I do coaching and counseling, I see two types of tired when it comes to rock bottom. And one is the tired where they just surrender to the sickness. And then the others, they're tired of just being like this and they got to change, you know. And it's such a powerful crossroad, you know.
Right.
And it always makes me nervous when I see a client get there. I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? Let's go to the right, let's go to the right, you know. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just compromise with their condition and they just live a life less fulfilling. And it's the saddest, most heartbreaking moment. And so it's amazing to see that you have made that change. But I'm reading that you described it as emerging from not seeing yourself. What did you mean by that?
Say that again about not seeing
You
myself.
you you describe your calling, your transformation as emerging from not seeing yourself. What did you mean by
Oh, that's,
that?
well,
It's like, where did I write that?
where did um,
I'm
I
thinking
suppose,
it's from
yes.
I'm thinking we get so caught up in our identity of our issue, our situation that we lose our true identity. So I'm thinking that's what you were
Ah,
meaning.
yes. I would say that some of my shifts, maybe not seeing myself or just losing myself so much with the disorder
Hmm.
and not seeing myself in terms of my life that
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to live, but also like the life that I was living with my eating disorder that was so small and so dark and so sad.
Hmm.
Um, and I I knew I wanted to step into my life or if anything, step into the totality of who I am
Yes.
as a human being
Hmm.
and not seeing that and not sure what that was going to look like, but some type of radical trust of this
Hmm.
process.
Hmm. Yeah, when I'm talking to some of my clients that are have broken self-esteem like so many of us, and they're focused on weight loss or something like that, in order for them not to punish themselves into being healthy, which is such a dyslexic way of looking at it. I'm like, you got
Right.
to love your body now and
Right.
also love your body later,
Yeah.
because this is not a punishment. This is an opportunity,
Hmm.
and I have to treat this as a reward system, not a system of rejection where I'm punishing myself by not having fun, like you were saying. And so, like, I'm thinking, when you say, learning to see ourselves, because when I was close to 400 pounds, I didn't see, all I could see was the cellulite. I couldn't
Hmm.
see my heart, my personality, my determination. I couldn't see all the good within me because I was hiding from myself. And so
Hmm.
I see that a lot with people that are struggling with different disorders, where their disorder becomes their identity, you know. Was that the case with you where your anorexia became your identity?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
100%. And that was terrifying of how do I live a life without anorexia since it shapes so much of who I am.
Hmm.
And finding, what, when I work with folks, there used to be this kind of mindset around treatment that anorexia or eating disorders are manipulative monsters and they're horrible, and that you kind of attack the monster, you battle the monster. And over the years, there's been more therapy around, which I really like and prefer, is that your eating disorder served a role and a
Hmm.
function and a
Hmm.
perspective. So, how do we honor it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
while we look to let it go? Or
Hmm.
how do we take that energy and reshape it into something that is more serving, something that is serving that doesn't cause you so much harm and
Hmm.
damage?
Yeah.
So I actually really prefer the mode of taking our eating disorder and looking at it as it's a role and a function, and how do we honor it? Um, and how do we kind of evolve with that, so that we can continue with our identity, continue with who we are, continue with like this person that we want to be, and this person that we may not know how
Hmm.
things are going to shape up for us.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that because you're basically saying we're taking a more of an acceptance model instead of rejection,
Right.
like, hey, you were a loser these past 10 years. Now we're going to teach you to be a winner. Like, that's so harsh.
Right.
Instead of, hey, that worked for you in that moment in that season. Now we're going to modify it to make things even better. And yeah, it's, there, and man, what was the treatment like when you were going through it back then?
Uh, when I was going through it, it involved like working with a therapist and a dietitian. And I felt really blessed in that I had really great folks who were very compassionate and very
Hmm.
curious and working with me to move through my eating disorder. But usually, and that hasn't changed much, and that usually treatment does involve therapy. It does
Hmm.
involve working
Hmm.
with a dietitian. It
Hmm.
does also involve, having a medical component, a medical
Hmm.
evaluation to make sure all is okay. Uh, and now we're looking to like expand treatment, and that at times it can involve having support, having groups, have even mentors
Hmm.
and advocates to help folks kind of like navigate treatment, because that can be really, really hard for
Hmm.
folks.
Hmm. It's interesting, because a good chunk of my practice deals with addictions. Very light on the eating disorders because that's not really my specialty, but I've had a few that have come in here and have just really opened my eyes to the deep struggle. And I remember one client saying, look, I can avoid the bar, I can avoid the drug dealer, but food is everywhere, and the battle from going from restrictive to accepting was, I had to refer someplace else, but like it really made me take another look at that, and how powerfully destructive it can be. What stereotypes is society still getting wrong about eating disorders?
I think the big stereotype society gets wrong about eating disorders is that eating disorders, like when I ask folks to think of a person with an eating disorder, it's like,
Hmm.
well, it's usually a very thin, emaciated person. And I was like,
Right.
okay, we really need to really like abolish that stereotype right away.
Hmm.
When I tell folks like, hey, folks in large bodies actually can have anorexia, they're like, no, that doesn't make sense. And like, actually, some of the more really severe restricting that I see are folks in large bodies. And what's happening for folks in large bodies is that they're being told they need to restrict. They're being praised or need to restrict. I
Yes.
mean, even in medical establishments, it's like,
Hmm.
it's okay if you don't eat a whole lot of food because of your large body. And that's just not an okay message for
Hmm.
anybody. I mean, there are
Hmm.
studies that point out that malnutrition can occur in all body types. So
Hmm.
we really need to kind of break away from weight equals health, because that's just not true.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it was amazing when one of my first gyms, the gym owner Heidi Halou had hooked me up with a nutritionist, and I became their poster boy. And she took well, she says she's a food coach, not a nutritionist. But anyways, she really helped me with my relationship with food, and it was probably the most powerful therapy I've ever had because I didn't know I had all these hangups. You know,
Right.
yeah, I didn't know I had all these really weird relationships with food because I had really created this shield in my cellulite. And when she started to break that down, I mean, there were some tearful moments. Like I didn't understand, and I just remember her helping me break free from all that. And the first lesson was that I don't have to be hungry, you know.
My God, that yeah, yeah,
I tell people that now. It's like, if you're doing it right, you won't be hungry. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm never hungry when I'm doing it right. But it
right.
was so weird because like our society, like you said, teaches us to starve ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, so how do you not take it as a punishment when I'm starving and I'm watching everybody else eat?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You emphasize that eating disorders affect people across all identities, cultures, and just genders. Why hasn't treatment caught up with that? Why is the gap so big?
That is a great, great question, because we have so much prevalence data that shows that eating disorders not only occur in marginalized folks, but they are actually higher rates, and that marginalization actually puts you more at risk for an eating disorder.
Hmm.
Uh, so we are still, and I also feel like we're still pretty far behind in that, the average time of someone who develops an eating disorder by the time they get to treatment,
Hmm.
is usually like 5 to 7 years. So we're not doing great when it
Wow.
comes
Yeah.
to I
Yeah.
think there's still a lot of secrecy and a lot of shame,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
comes with it. We live in a diet culture that is, pretty, like I would even say, like abusively demands that we be thin at all costs,
A
even if it
fad diet
compromises,
culture, which is insane.
yeah, even if it compromises our health. I
Hmm.
mean, this GLP-1 craze is pretty scary for me,
Yeah.
actually. And I think
Yeah.
scary for many of us. Like, what are we doing? And
Hmm.
and that really that what I feel, the rationalization from folks like, but I'm thin and I'm happier now and I have energy and I can do all the things. And I'm like, you're taking a substance that we know is, long-term wise, is going to impact your health,
Hmm.
not in a good way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we are just really caught up in that weight equals health. We're also still, I think many of us are caught up with, well, I don't know what to do with an eating disorder. So there still is that mindset of who gets an eating disorder, that stereotype that I was sharing. And the stereotype is often that very white,
Yeah.
affluent, able-bodied, thin girl
Yep.
with an eating disorder. And
Yep.
I over the years, I've asked folks, so do you not screen at your clinic? And they're like, well, we're still on that mindset of, and I'm like, that actually is is really going to cause a lot of harm to folks. And by the time they screen, um, or by the time someone presents with an eating disorder at their clinic, they have a full-blown eating disorder that
Mm-hmm.
they are just caught and entrenched with. And I feel like, you know, if we had screened earlier, their prognosis would have been better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think they should, do you think there should be more educational courses in the schools? I mean, to go along with, I don't, do they even teach health anymore in schools? I mean, you know, what are your thoughts?
I think I think everyone needs to take a nutrition class, and I think
Mm,
it should be in the school. And I worry about like, well, what is being taught? Because we're still being taught, you know, a health that feels very diety.
mm,
Then I don't want that. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I want nutrition to be taught with facts.
Yeah.
And I want nutrition to be taught in a holistic way.
Mm-hmm.
And I want food to be taught in food is an enjoyable, pleasurable aspect of our lives. And I also think food needs to be taught into also, I mean, this could be touchy, but emphasizing food justice and that, we also still deal with poverty and
Mm-hmm.
that folks don't have access to
Ooh.
foods. And so what has come up with that? I mean, looking recently, the past couple of years of like how our grocery bills have skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of things working against being healthy, but yeah, I don't want to go down that road. I'll go down the conspiracy road real easy.
Yeah, no. I don't want to go, yeah.
You're like, what is this show about? No, no, we're not gonna go there.
Okay, but yeah.
That'll be the other show. That'll be the other show.
Okay.
Okay, so for someone who is listening and thinks this doesn't apply to me, what would you want them to understand about how these issues can show up in unexpected ways?
I want folks to just ask themselves honestly,
Mm,
as you're making your food choices, as you're eating throughout the day, asking folks like, are you making decisions based on liberation or deprivation? Like, um,
you kill half of them with that. Actually, probably more than half.
Yes. And granted, I can't say these things. I used to be able to say these things, but more recently, I can't say these things anymore, in particular in the past couple of years of like of not intersecting food access. Like for many folks, making food choices involve affordability,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is something that enrages me, but yet I mean, and this isn't a new issue. I feel like, but in the past couple of years, it's really come to light just how we have to look at food justice.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so asking folks like, okay, with all the factors that you have to contend with your food choices and affordability being probably the most number one aspect.
Hmm.
After that, when you are in your range of foods that you can afford and access, what kind of decisions are you making? Are you
Mm.
making decisions based on, I enjoy this food, this food is nourishing, or is it kind of like, I need to cut back, this is good food, this is
Hmm.
bad food.
Hmm.
Then I would say, that's going to lead you into a pretty embroiled relationship with food that that's going to be tough,
Yeah.
probably most likely not fun,
Hmm.
because bodies don't understand deprivation.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And I've worked with folks who are like, I binge in the evenings, or I eat all these, I eat an entire bag of cookies and I don't understand why. And I said, well, what are you eating throughout the day? And they're like, well, I'm eating this, I'm eating that. I'm like, you're not eating much, or if you're eating quite a bit, like, are you enjoying this? And, like, I use a phrase at times like, if you're having
Mm-hmm.
sad salads for lunch and dinner,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to eat that box of cookies.
Yeah.
It's just a deprivation,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
overeat cycle.
Yeah. You're starving. I mean, how long can you avoid that? I mean, it's funny because I remember talking to a client not too long ago, and they were struggling with energy and depression and since my own experience, I said, okay, what are you eating? And she's like, what am I eating?
Right.
I said, yeah, what are you eating? You know, and so she wouldn't eat it all day except for maybe a bag of Skittles or whatever. And then at night, she would binge on hot dogs and whatever. And I'm just like, oh girl.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. I was like, you're eating horrible. And I was like, and I don't even want to ask you if you're drinking water. And she's like, water. And she said, I don't like water. And I'm like, it's like, aren't we 90% water? I mean, like you're ashy on the inside. Yeah, your eyebrows are dehydrated. So no wonder you don't have energy and you feel depressed. And I was like, let's start incorporating some meals, and it seems so simple because I think almost our society complicates it, but we have to eat. It's about eating and not deprivation, like you're saying, and just finding the right foods, even if you're on a budget. But we're not taught that, we're just not. I know a billion different ways to eat carbs, but I was never taught how to find. Now, when Leslie Belmore, my food coach, taught me about healthy carbs, I was like, I didn't even know what that was. Yeah, so it's interesting. You approach eating disorders through like a social justice lens, and you've been kind of hinting on it on different pieces, which are really interesting. How does the system deal with racism, weight stigma, and gender norms? How does it actually shape our relationship with food and our bodies? And how do you address that from a social justice lens?
That's a great question. I I mean, first, when I look at eating disorders from a social justice lens, I mean, the first thing that comes out for folks is not believing they have an eating disorder. That
Mm,
is that's the very first thing that often comes out. And over the years, hearing that, I'm not white or thin enough to have an eating disorder. I'm like, okay, we really need to break down
hmm
that stereotype. Um, hearing from clinicians who may not see some, or who may see a patient in front of them and don't think like they could possibly have an eating disorder because
hmm
they're not white and thin enough. So there's like those aspects from a social justice lens of who thinks they have an eating disorder, who gets screened to have an eating disorder. So we all already have that.
hmm
When and folks also look at eating disorders as like, they're issues of control, and people need to be stop being so rigid
hmm
and relax. And I feel like, that's not a very compassionate approach when we look at someone who has an eating disorder. Is control a part of it? Absolutely. But when I work with folks who have eating disorders, they often are way too flexible.
mm,
Some of it is actually boundary setting.
hmm hmm
So this element of people are control freaks and need to relax. I'm like, no, actually, folks who have eating disorders actually, I think, are the opposite, are way too flexible, and I would like for them to say no every
hmm
once in a while.
hmm
So there's like that aspect. Also, eating disorders are disorders of marginalization. They're disorders of shame and isolation,
hmm
and that's something we often don't think about. Like when you internalize marginalization, you're saying to yourself like, it's okay for me to be thrown away. It's okay for me to be ostracized. I don't matter as much. Um,
hmm
And that is absolutely ripe terrain for an eating disorder to
Mm.
develop.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So when we're looking with folks who are, so many times when working with folks who are BIPOC, who are transgender,
Mm-hmm.
who are queer, what I hear is an intersection of how thinness plays into that, of that
Mm.
I recognize who I am as a BIPOC person, as a queer person, as a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
And being thin would help me,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, would help me in that, you know, society really doesn't care about me or tolerate me as a BIPOC person. But if I'm thin, I society will
That's a
uh,
ticket.
yeah, that's a ticket, will tolerate me more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll be a little bit more in. Um, you know, because when I ask folks like what are you hoping for weight loss? I mean, folks share all kinds of ways of being happy, but sometimes when you like go deeper with folks, they're like, well, I want inclusion. I want love. I
Mm-hmm.
want belonging. I
Mm-hmm.
and sharing like, well, weight loss isn't going to give you that. I mean, what you want are essential human needs. We
Mm-hmm.
want those things and we deserve those things.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And but I tell them like what you're describing is belonging. And we all have that. And diet culture and weight manipulates us because weight loss is about fitting in
Mm.
because you fit in when you lose the weight, you're out when you gain the
Mm-hmm.
weight. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not belonging. That's
Mm-mm.
fitting in. And they feel and they have aspects that are similar, but they're very different.
Yeah.
Like you and I, and we all know that. Like
Yeah.
belonging is like you're a value in. I see
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah.
Fitting in is like, are you this or are you that? Because once you're that, goodbye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've been touching on the whole thinness thing, and how society has encouraged unhealthy relationships with food. Almost like you remember that the movie with Will Smith, The Pursuit of Happiness. It's almost like we have this pursuit of thinness.
Hmm.
How do we unlearn that? And then my other question is, have you seen almost like a snapback reaction in society where we've gone totally in the opposite direction of thinness, which is also unhealthy?
Um, so what is your first question? Because you have a couple of questions.
How do we
Sounds like
unlearn?
yes,
So I have to say this before I forget.
yes.
How do we unlearn the culture of thinness that is really destroying us?
Mm. Ooh,
Mm,
that I like the first thing is like a willingness. Like, are we
mm,
willing to unlearn this? I mean,
mm-hmm,
sometimes in social settings, I'm like arguing with folks. I'm like, okay, it doesn't seem like we're gonna go there, or there's this willingness to unlearn. So I think all the ways we have to look at we're buying into thin privilege.
mm-hmm,
We're
mm-hmm.
buying into this. We're investing in this.
Right.
We're kind of keeping this alive
Mm-hmm,
in ways. So what are we going to do to unlearn this? Like does and asking folks like it is an individual question like do your values of what's important to you align with thinness?
mm-hmm,
Often don't. So it is a matter of looking at that.
mm-hmm,
I think where folks start to feel like I can't because they feel like, well, then I would flip to the other side and I would just be eating uncontrollably.
mm-hmm,
And and that is a dialogue that actually there's this podcast called The Maintenance Phase that really breaks down like even looking at our sugar addiction and
mm-hmm,
others and really pointing out that like we would flip in the other side because of just the deprivation. Like I don't think
mm-hmm,
we realize how much deprivation that we have put ourselves through, how many food rules we have
mm-hmm,
put ourselves through, how much we have labeled foods good and bad. I mean,
mm-hmm,
the first step I ask folks is like, are you willing to liberate all foods? And I get like, I can't. I would eat chips and cookies nonstop. And I'm like, okay, then we
No,
need
you
to
won't.
come back to body trust because
Mm-hmm.
you won't.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
like, like you will, once you get back to body trust, yeah, you'll want a cookie, but you'll also want kale, and you'll also want,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like you will want various proteins. I mean, you will, your body wants balance.
Yes. Yes, it does. And when I was with like I said, when I was with my food coach, she really helped me learn the balance. And I loved her because she told me like I could have whatever I want. It
Right.
just, and I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and there it usually comes with like, are you kidding me?
Right, right, right.
I don't
Like
trust myself.
I will bar myself in Domino's Pizza and never come out. But
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, we
but it
people
was
just like,
it was a mindset of deprivation and because I was
right,
always hungry because I wasn't eating right. So when I started eating right and I wasn't hungry, I could eat like a half a cookie and be good.
right.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Um, but my second question was in the opposition of the pursuit of thinness, I've seen the pendulum swing in the opposite direction to where we've almost started to embrace obesity. Have you seen that?
Well, that is a very complex question
Mm,
or thought. And I think a lot of messages or like embracing obesity, I think is like we need to break that down further.
hmm
Um,
And it's not,
because
and we don't call it obesity. I think they called it I can't remember. It wasn't body shaming, it was something else. But it was basically, and I get loving the body we're in currently, but I also understand that I need to be healthier so my knees don't hurt, my back doesn't hurt, and that my heart can breathe. You know,
sure,
um, so yeah, that's why I'm like, I don't want to punish myself into being healthy. I want to enjoy the opportunity of being healthy and enjoy my body the whole way through.
right.
Hmm.
I think when we look at large bodies, or like, are we saying like let's move in that direction and or embrace it? And I think there's a lot of messaging and that has gotten extreme and because I would say that it's about I would say like, well, then why don't we all like sit down and define health? Because is it really about we are saying like let's all be large bodied? I think it's more about, well, where is my body going to land? And if it's
Right.
large, then it's large.
Right.
Um, so is it that, or is it more around looking at
Hmm.
our relationship with food, how we're eating, our relationship
Hmm.
with exercise?
Hmm.
If folks are really struggling with a relationship with food, how do we then and we have compassion
Hmm.
and help folks,
Yeah,
because if someone is eating uncontrollably, let's say, then we know there's more going on. um,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
often when someone is eating at that kind of, I've worked with folks who are like, I seriously, I binge almost all day. And what goes hand in hand with that is some really deep-seated unresolved trauma
Hmm.
that
Hmm. Yeah.
that needs to be held with a lot of compassion and also some pretty significant trauma treatment
Yeah.
so that folks develop a new relationship with food.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so it isn't so much of like, are we swinging in the other direction, or because it's more around like, well, I just and what may look like swinging in the other direction might be folks who are in large bodies. Like, I just want to be treated well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I, I want to be able to walk into society
Hmm.
and not have looks, not have
Mm-hmm.
comments,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I eat in public.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And folks in large bodies will tell you that I have had unsolicited comments and advice given to me when I eat in public, when
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the grocery store. And so it's more around like, then what are we doing here?
Right. Because it's just another form of abuse and shame, which
Absolutely.
only creates the issue even stronger, for us to hide,
Right.
yeah, it's a
Right.
horrible dynamic,
Right.
thin or large.
Right.
You
Because we
know.
don't know what bodies are going to do.
Hmm.
In that, sometimes working with folks who are like, I have, I'm now going to farmers markets. I have balanced meals. I
Hmm.
walk pretty
Hmm.
regularly. I can bend down and tie my shoes.
Hmm. Hmm.
I sleep better at night. My mood has kind of lifted. But
Yeah,
they're like, but I haven't lost weight. And I'm like, so are
it's
you
okay.
telling me all of that is not worth it?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I think part of it is I tell a lot of people, I said, let's look at the other wins, forget the scale.
Right.
Really, I tell people, I said, look, I work out for stress relief because life is stressful. And I can't imagine going back to my fast food couch potato lifestyle because I was in the hospital multiple times for heart palpitations because I
Mm,
was just so unhealthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. And now I exercise and I drink water and I feel better.
hmm
Even when the scale doesn't move for whatever reason, I feel better and I love feeling better. And I really try to help people to tap into that, forget the scale. Mm.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about balance, and food liberation, what does a balanced, food liberated person look like in everyday life?
Hmm. I'm envisioning this. I mean, balance is, I mean, we have our image of folks who get up and like,
Hmm.
and meditate and, have tea and have breakfast,
Right.
and then pack a lunch and then come
Hmm.
back and chop vegetables for dinner.
Yes.
Like, yes, of course, and have their protein. And then after dinner, they can have a piece of chocolate or like a scoop
Hmm.
of ice cream. Like,
Hmm.
sure, all of that. And yes, we strive for that, absolutely. And we have those moments. But I also feel balance is also that forgiveness. Like sometimes
Mm.
we're tired. We come home and it's like, you know, I'm I don't have anything in me. I'm just going to order some food.
Yeah.
Balance, I mean, I think a lot of balance is um like sometimes also like, hey, I usually like to take a walk after dinner, but today was particularly stressful. Maybe I'll just take a 5-minute walk instead,
Yeah.
so balance is like kind of assessing where you are at,
Hmm.
and sometimes like having to make decisions, and giving ourselves a break. Like sometimes we make decisions on, oh, I was really stressed today. I'm really going to have a hard workout because I'm tired. Sometimes balance is, I'm really stressed today. I think I need some gentleness for
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
body. So it's just kind of navigating that. Balance
Hmm.
is um, of man, I'm really upset, with what happened. So it's a bucket of chicken and Ben and Jerry's tonight.
Mm.
And balance
Mm.
can also mean like, oh, what would feel nourishing right now? Because
Hmm.
I just, and when you have that bucket of chicken and Ben and Jerry's, like saying the next day, like, you know, um, sometimes I stress eat, and that
Yeah.
was a hard day, and sometimes that was an emotional eating period episode.
Hmm.
It happens to all of us, and
Yes.
so balance sometimes
Hmm.
involves that, and balance sometimes means like I want to prepare, and have foods ready for me, and balance also could mean like, God, it's hard to get to the grocery store right now. So it, I think balance, I want to use the word forgiveness, but I also don't want to imply that we did something wrong by taking
Mm,
our emotions out. So I just don't want any type of room where it's like
hmm.
this we did something wrong, because then you just leave any room for shame to
Yeah,
creep in.
yeah, yeah.
But balance, and also just like just checking yourself
Hmm.
out, knowing, and if you're like, wow, I've been doing this bucket of chicken and Ben and Jerry's every day now for 2 weeks, maybe I need some help because I'm
Hmm.
probably avoiding some things, or
Hmm.
I need better tools.
Mm. It's really kind of cool. I love how you reframed all that because it's really about us just accepting that we're human beings who don't have to be perfect, you know. And I think we forget that in this obsession for thinness and perfection. Everything becomes so punitive and stressful, and we subconsciously abuse our bodies,
Mhm.
which affects everything. You talk about the workplace culture and diet culture colliding. How are these professional environments quietly reinforcing these disordered behaviors?
The workforce and diet culture.
Yep. Hmm.
I would say, the workforce can get really caught up into weight loss.
Mm.
And I I included a piece in my website. I have monthly blogs, and
Mm.
a more recent one looked at like this $1 million or million weight loss challenge, and it just has to do with workforce places like encouraging weight loss and say like let's
Hmm.
collectively, as a department, as a team, as a company, lose weight.
Hmm.
And then the ways that that is incentivize, incentivize, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
ways like, we give incentives for that, and
Yep.
ways that and then all the mixed messaging around
Hmm.
that. I mean, I worked at a place that had like, for every pound you lose, our company will give a pound of food to the to the poor. And I was like, that's a really mixed and odd and wow message of like, well, if we have money to give to food banks, why don't we just give to food banks?
Right,
So
right, right.
I was like, huh, that makes no sense. And what a real twist on weight and health and
Hmm.
poverty
Hmm.
and food. I didn't like it at all, and
Yeah.
I did voice my concerns about it.
Hmm.
So I feel like when workplaces get really caught up in weight loss,
Hmm.
it also starts to set a message of, well, lose weight, and how much weight you lose, you'll help your team win,
Yeah.
and which can set you up for actually developing unhealthy practices to lose
Hmm.
weight. Because then it's
Hmm.
about the weight loss again. So you're like, well, I could cut out water. I mean, just all the
Yeah.
things. No, I don't want you to cut out water.
Right, right.
Yes. So I'm like, well, why can't work if you want to create a competitive challenge,
Hmm.
why can't you do other things that involve there's so many things. Like, why can't you have
Hmm.
like who like a meditation challenge,
Yeah.
or
Walking.
um walking.
Hmm.
Um, there are just so
Hmm.
many things. Also, you can look at, yeah, I mean, so many
Yeah.
ideas, different
Hmm.
ideas. Like, we are creative people. We
We
can
are.
come
We are.
up with some really cool campaigns that involve taking a holistic viewpoint
Hmm.
of health, whereas our health at the end of something like this, we can develop new great habits and
Hmm.
actually have actually more holistic health.
What's funny for me is that the same workplaces that are having these weight loss challenges are the same ones that have donuts and chocolate in the break room, and I'm just like, okay, so now after we've had every type of carb and sugary sweet for the whole year. Now we're gonna do a weight loss challenge. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, that's hilarious.
Right. And because then again, that really odd message, like every once in a while,
Mm-hmm,
like, yeah, have a donut day. Why
mm-hmm,
not? And then everyone's and then you can also have a fruit day. I mean, there's
mm-hmm.
just you could just balance. Yeah.
Have you seen people develop almost some form of PTSD from the yo-yo of the fad diet to snapping back to overeating to back to the diet? Have you seen what does that look like? Because I've always suspected that happens, but I've never had anybody kind of clarify or validate.
Absolutely. I mean, it I have seen various forms of yo-yo dieting.
Hmm.
I've seen various forms of trying, folks trying like all kinds of gimmicks
Yeah.
and diet fads.
How does that affect their mentality when they keep doing this? And I mean, what do you see happen?
I see just like ongoing shame.
Mm,
I see um, ongoing like determination of like, okay, something needs to
mm,
fit. I see like ongoing kind of desperation,
mm,
sadness.
mm,
I see people feeling like they get on diets to somehow gain control, but what it feels like is this out of control. I mean, folks will always share that they regain
mm.
weight and regain more
Yeah,
weight.
yeah.
So there is this like what am I, also this like terror of like, well, what am I doing? And then wow, I must need to try harder.
Hmm.
So it does set up a trauma cycle. I mean,
Yeah.
thinking about, I mean, sorry to bring in a touchy topic, but thinking about abusive relationships, like we
Hmm.
can get caught up in one because what we're doing isn't making this person happy and they just keep getting angry at us. So our thoughts like, I have to try harder. I have to be
Mm,
even nicer, even more
hmm.
compromising, even bending more. And because we're now trauma bonded.
Hmm.
And we know that that doesn't work.
No.
And
So
never.
we form a trauma bond with the dysfunctional eating that we're doing to ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. So let me veer in a different direction.
Okay.
You have a background in martial arts.
Do.
How has that, influenced your whole healthy healing, in embodiment in what you do with this mission?
Mm, I love that. Martial arts has taught me so much in terms of healthy embodiment. Like,
Hmm.
first of all, you have to be connected to your body. You
Mm,
have to take care of your body because you can't do martial arts if you're not taking care of your body. And that means eating, drinking water, resting. I mean,
hmm.
rest is so that way you can do martial arts.
Hmm.
Martial arts also well, I feel like when you're in a school that really embodies holistic health,
Hmm.
martial arts also has taught me to, really respect my limits. Like
Mm.
there are things I can do, there are things I cannot do. And
Right.
particularly as I'm getting older, like, yeah, I can't train the way I used to anymore. Or there are some moves that, I don't have the flexibility anymore to do some of
Hmm.
these
Hmm.
moves. And martial arts really teaches you to like, respect those limits
Right.
that
Mm.
you have. Um, Martial arts has also taught me about how do I relate to myself and others.
Mm.
Because what I see so much with eating disorder behaviors is like there's the eating disorder behavior, and we're talking about food and we're talking about bodies and that relationship. But there's also a lot of ways that people struggle interpersonally with
Mm.
others too. Like all the time, every single person coming in has to share interpersonally a struggle that they
Hmm.
have. And
Hmm.
Martial arts through sparring and through our partner work has taught me of like how to set boundaries, how to relate to someone, how to trust someone,
Mm-hmm.
how to know that someone had good intentions, but they may have hit me a little too hard.
Mm.
How do I also take accountability when I had good intentions, but I hit someone a little
Mm-hmm.
too hard? So there's just that aspect. Also, martial arts, like, oh, someone did better than me in sparring. They kind of quote unquote won. How do I take that?
Mm-hmm.
That type of what can feel like a bruise literally to your ego.
Right.
And also martial arts teaches us that, the only way we can become better
Mm-hmm.
is if we kind of come in 100% with someone and asking them to come in 100% with us.
Right.
Like we have to lift each other up to grow together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So when you train other professionals, I'm sure you're using, all the things you've learned through martial arts and all of your other clinical experience. What's one mindset shift that you teach these leaders that might change everything for them?
Uh, when I'm working with various leaders,
Yeah, yeah, professionals, leaders, yeah.
mhm. um, when I am working with them, well, there's many messages, so I'm trying to hone down on a message. But more, I will say more recently because I'm giving a lot more trainings to folks who don't specialize in eating disorders,
Hmm.
and they say like, I don't know what to do. Um, I I tell them, that so you may not know what to do, and you may refer out,
Hmm.
and that is your decision.
Hmm.
But you may be the first person someone shares that they have an eating disorder with.
Hmm.
How you hold that space with your compassion and your curiosity and your just acceptance, like
Hmm.
that's healing.
Yeah, that's
That's
huge.
incredibly healing. And for someone who just shared their story for the first time and said it out loud,
Hmm.
that's really vulnerable. And believe me, you listening and having compassion for them, that's healing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. We talk about safe spaces all the time in today's culture, but I don't think we understand how powerful it is
Yeah.
when we create that, especially with an eating disorder. Because I think that's actually harder to talk about than actually having a drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, drug addictions are like, obvious, like, yeah, I know I shouldn't be doing crack, but in eating disorders, like, there's so many mixed messages, and then there's the cultural part that, you just don't know, do I talk, and I don't know if it's different for men or for women, but like, do I talk about it? Do I share it? Is it just me? I know they're gonna say just eat more salads. I'm eating salads until they're coming out my ears. It's not working, What are some of the things that these professionals overlook when it comes to an eating disorder?
Um, I would say professionals, well, folks still get caught up in the stereotype.
Mm,
Um, I think there's sometimes like too much focus on the food. Um,
mm,
when yes, it is about the food, but at times there can be too much focus on what someone is actually eating.
mm,
I think professionals at times get caught up perhaps with their own anxiety. Like eating disorders just bring up anxiety in all of us because it's our kind of like this human aspect. Like we
mm,
are programmed to eat.
mm,
And
mm,
that is a very internal relationship that we have. And so when we're with someone and that relationship is all askew, like we as a clinician, like then we become like, oh, oh. And because I'm like, that's just our human connection of like when someone is misusing food, we do are affected by it.
Yes.
Absolutely, because it's not natural. I mean, because our bodies, we are programmed to have a relationship with food. So when we hear someone who is struggling, it can bring up our own anxiety. And
Mm-hmm.
so asking clinicians like, check out your own anxieties, check
Mm-hmm.
out your own biases, check out your own viewpoints, and forgive yourself and hold yourself to that, but start to know when that starts to enter the room with
Mm-hmm.
someone
Hmm.
who is sharing their relationship struggles with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, in your work, what does a true breakthrough moment look like for someone struggling?
um Breakthrough moments are when folks start to develop a vocabulary of kindness.
Wow. Okay.
They words, different words start to happen. There's a bit more of forgiveness. There's a relaxation.
Yeah. They can breathe.
Yeah, they can breathe. There's something about wow, I kindness just starts to come in, and you could
Mm-hmm.
see that it starts to like where they really began to embody it as a value.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I remember when I was able to start breathing and it was really just the education and the information that I just didn't understand. I didn't understand my body. I didn't understand my relationship with food. I didn't understand anything. And I started to weigh myself every day, not in a crazy anxiety filled way, but I wanted, somebody had told me, your body's going to fluctuate, and to not be afraid of it. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, this is, I gained some weight because I was sick. I'm inflamed or whatever. So it no longer held me hostage. Like, oh my God, I gained a pound. Like it was no longer like that. And so it was kind of interesting, and it gave me more control to just breathe and not be afraid, and when it was like that, because I know the scale is like just one small indication, but like I'm my clothes, how I feel, my knees no longer hurt when I walk up the stairs. I get up and I don't groan. All
Right.
of those things. I don't have to worry about my back going out, if I do something crazy, and I noticed that, and it it's so interesting when you don't feel held hostage by your body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think once you start getting that, yeah, your inner dialogue starts to change, which you start to talk different. You
Right.
know, I used to always kind of hunch my shoulders to try to, cover up, and I used to always wear the most baggy clothes to hide all the lumps and bumps, and when I started wearing things that fit better, I knew it was a confidence thing where I was more accepting of my body, as it is and as it's transforming. And it's just a powerful moment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So one last question.
Yes.
What is one truth about our bodies and our self-worth that you wish everyone truly believed about themselves?
Hmm. Um, we are all a value in.
Ooh,
That's yeah. I'm gonna end with that.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I love that. I love that. So where can people find you to, maybe see more of what you do, or, maybe even, you know, contact you for questions if they have any? I mean, what's the next project? What are you doing?
My next project just involved more trainings.
Okay.
So talking to um, professionals of all sorts to talk about eating disorders, but
Mm,
also to talk about disordered eating, diet culture, body liberation.
mm,
So those are the projects that I am working on. You can find me various ways. I'm on LinkedIn, just
Okay.
with my name, Marcella Raimondo.
Hmm.
I'm on Instagram under Dr. Marcella Raimondo. You could follow me there.
Okay.
I have a website. Um, you can, which is marcellaedtraining.com,
Okay.
and ED standing for eating disorders. And so you'll see my website and then just ways to get a hold of me there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, man, ladies and gentlemen, if this resonated with you, if you really vibed with this conversation, this very incredible conversation about redefining health, because that relationship with ourselves, with our food, isn't just about our bodies. It's what's happening and the stories we tell ourselves to have a liberated, free mind to transform and not be locked in the boxes that society has put us in. So if that is you, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast because it is about balance and breakthroughs. And every story we have on here is about a breakthrough. And I love the breakthroughs you're doing with people in their body, probably because it's personal for me, but I
Mm.
know how hard it is to break the box, the self-destructive box that we've been in just in our bodies. So I totally appreciate what you're doing, Marcella. Thank you
Oh,
for being on the
yeah.
show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. And as always, tune in next week for another episode of Balance and Breakthroughs. And I love you guys. Peace.